So I think I'll just blow through this kind of introductory slideshow. So what I'm going to talk about is a system, a library for time series analysis. Ooh, this is working on its own. It's quite interesting. Stop it. Let's see what happens. So let's just show hands. Who uses MATLAB, say, on a daily basis? You all use MATLAB. Who uses Cronux? Okay. So this is kind of similar in terms of the goals to what Cronux does, and I'm just going to present it and show you a few examples, and then we can also follow up if anyone is interested in trying it out. We can follow up on how to try it out, and I think it should be pretty easy.
Did you say you developed this?
Yes. So this is stuff that I developed. I am actually not an electrophysiologist at all. I'm a neuroanatomist, human neuroanatomist. They do MRI research. But I actually used to be an electrophysiologist a long time ago, and as I'll show you in a few minutes, data that I collected. I'm recovering slowly, but this I actually developed for the purposes of using neuroimaging data. But the idea behind this library was to be quite generic, so that people can develop their own pipelines for analysis for whatever data, and with some emphasis on stuff that appears in neuroscience experiments, whether they be in neuroimaging or in electrophysiology. So I'm just going to briefly say why I think Python is a good language to do scientific computing in. Then I'm going to introduce the library itself and show a couple of examples. Maybe just one will just focus on the spike-triggered average, and I'll very quickly just show you that it's possible to do also bivariate statistics with this, and bivariate spectral analysis, things of that sort, and kind of direct you to examples in our documentation that can show you how to do it. So okay, why Python? Well, first of all, one of its advantages is that it's free, it's open source, and in contrast, say, to MATLAB, it's a real programming language. So for example, if any of you have used object orientation in MATLAB, I haven't tried that, but I've heard it's quite painful. And here
they fixed it a few years ago, so it's a lot better now.
Okay.
It's more real.
Okay, but
it's still an afterthought technically because they just had it.
But from my experience, building large systems, for example, with MATLAB it can be painful. So doing a small calculation in linear algebra, it's great. But Python, at any rate, is a real programming language, and it was written to be quite easy to read. So it was designed as a teaching language, and so it's kind of executable pseudocode, is what people call it. And there's a whole array of quite nice libraries for scientific computing, visualization, things of that sort, on which we can base our analysis libraries, our analysis scripts. Okay. So I'll just mention that Nighttime is part of a larger project to write neuroimaging software in Python. Here's the website. I'll show that again later.
And your Nighttime is the thing that you developed. Is NiPi a sort of umbrella organization?
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of an umbrella. Okay, I'll just show the website. Here's the org chart. So there's NiPi. There's a library called NiPi as well, but there are a few other libraries. Actually, this is kind of the field that I'm working in right now, diffusion imaging. But so this is the nipi.org. If you go to nipi.org, it'll actually take you here, nipi.org. And then Nighttime is nipi.org/nighttime. And so we have here the documentation.
Is there hardware support for Nighttime? So one of the things MATLAB can do is interact with different drivers and parts, read in data from cameras and so forth correctly.
There is some, although Nighttime is not. There is in Python.
There is in Python. Okay.
Yeah, there is in Python. I should.
So those things are also actively being developed.
Yeah, and for data formats, there's a whole bunch of. There's something called OpenElectrophi, OpenElectrophi, whichever way you pronounce it.
So maybe a related question is this analysis only, or is acquisition kind of part of the?
This is analysis only.
Analysis only. Okay.
Analysis only. Yeah. This is just analysis. Let me maybe show you a little bit of what can be done. So, if you're interested in learning a little bit more on why Python, this might be, I've linked to that from the GitHub repository that I sent around. So this is that GitHub repository. So just look for teaching nighttime on GitHub, and there's a link to that from here, from the kind of the README part of the text. Also, if you want to follow along now, you can just click on these links. They'll take you to the notebooks that I'm executing, a kind of static shot of the notebooks. So, okay. This tool that I'm using here is actually running inside my browser. It's called IPython, and the idea here is this is an interactive version of Python. It's kind of a layer of interactivity on top of the language itself. And the nice thing about this is that it allows to do very reproducible analysis. So I'll open a new notebook just to demonstrate how this works. I have a variable, and it's right there. So say I want to print it, prints it out. Say I want to plot it. The plot gets kind of pasted in here. And so here, this is the kind of the simple version of the case where the computation and the result are all kind of in the same place. And I think that's a very, so now we can, if this were figure 1 in my next paper, here I can give you exactly the computation that led to figure 1. So this gives us a real handle on reproducible research from the data to the figure. And it has a few more. You could do stuff like make cells that are, instead of being code, they're text. So I can write, I don't know, it inserts the title, including, I can do, I don't know, I can insert LaTeX to write math in here, so I can do equations. Right, so I can embed in this more, so this could be the whole paper, ultimately. It can be an executable paper. So that's the idea of this notebook. And, so the examples that I'll show are all these notebooks, and you can then download them and try out the different examples. Let me use this notebook idea to introduce the library. So the main idea behind the library is that it's separated into a whole host of functions and classes to represent time series, represent events happening in time, and then another whole library of stuff to do analysis, or functions to do certain kinds of analysis. Let me just demonstrate that. So this is kind of the this import statement right here is just to get stuff into the namespace of this particular session. And then I can make the simplest kind of representation of time is a time array. So here I have a representation of 1 millisecond, 2 millisecond, 3 milliseconds. It doesn't have to be continuous. I can just, for example, I can just make this 5 instead. And now I have a time array with a time unit attached to it. For example, if I ask what is in this time array, the third item is 5 milliseconds, right? So you see down here, can people actually see the screen? I'm not blocking.
Oh, and this is one thing that I've discovered. So Python iterates from 0 on up, right? Not starting at 1. So that's why 2 is actually the third item.
Yeah, exactly. It's 0 based, the indexing. So you can see it appears together with the units. It's got the units attached to it. And one important idea that is something that people, all of you probably analyzing time series all the time, might have noticed, is that representing time and kind of slicing into time can be a really challenging thing because of issues having to do with the precision of representing floats in computer memory. And the way we solve that is by not representing time as floats at all. They're all integers. They're all integers. So under the hood, this is the technical solution here, is to represent, so here I take the same time array that I took before and I can convert it into something else. And it doesn't matter. Under the hood, they're all this really, really big number. So this is, again, this is 1 millisecond. And the reason is we represent everything in the smallest unit we can imagine that anyone might want to use for analysis of time series. From neuroscience experiments, in this case, were presented in picoseconds. So if you want to change that, you can change that. The thing that it limits us is on the other end, the longest experiment that we can possibly do. This is the longest in 64 we can represent, and that corresponds to 106 days. So if your experiment is longer than 106 days, first of all, congratulations. And the other is you can still, you'll have to change you can't do picoseconds anymore. I'm sorry. So if you want picoseconds for 106, more than 106 days, I'm sorry. Okay, so that's one kind of representation. Another kind is a uniform time, right? There's often what we do is we're sampling in time uniformly with some sampling rate. So here I'm kind of representing this again. This is this object that represents time. I can give it for now. I can give it in this case a duration. I'll bring this up. A certain duration of this uniform time with a certain sampling rate, and sampling rate is always given in units of hertz. And so here we get back. I'm printing it out, and we get back uniform sampling. You'll notice again it's zero based. It starts at 0 milliseconds and goes on from there.
And this is basically what NetTime has been able to do, so that you can call duration sampling rate time unit, and it does the work for you to instance with that.
It packages it all together in a way that you can ask, for example, questions like, so let me just insert another cell above here. For example, this uniform time thing. Now I'm putting a dot. That's kind of in this language is now. After that, I can put some attribute of this thing. I'm going to press the tab, and it shows me all the attributes that are attached to this. Oh, let me just go and do. Let me bring this up so you all see it. So it gives me a list of the stuff that's in here. So for example, I can ask. It's got a lot of different attributes to it. Here, this is the one that I was kind of interested in. T0. What is the first time? And right, I didn't here specify T0, but if I were to specify T0, for example, I'd say, oh, actually I don't want to start at 0 milliseconds, I want to start at 10. Then now T0 is 10, and you can see that this has been pushed to 10 to 100 milliseconds. Pretty simple. Now, once we have that, we can, let me jump over a few things here, which you can explore on your own. Now we can represent events happening in time. So this is an important concept in our experiments. Might be, for example, when did a spike occur? And the spike-triggered average analysis that I'll show in a minute depends on representing events in time. So we have this representation of events. It has a few different things, but the basic thing is you can give it a bunch of times. These are the times when the events happen, and specify them in all kinds of ways. You can, for example, you can label them. You can say, oh, there were times that were spikes in one neuron and times that were spikes in another neuron. One certain kind of event in the experiment, some behavioral event or another. So you can kind of label those. I won't talk about epochs for now, but let me just jump straight to the time series, which is kind of the main analysis object. The time series will have some data, which is just a big uniform array, and then it might have something like a sampling rate. Right? So once we've specified this here, I'm just giving it as data some sign, and here for this example, I'm just plotting this time series. So I have sign, and this time series that I've created, now I can ask what kind of attributes does it have. So it'll have, for example, it'll have one of these uniform times that I showed you before. It's kind of the time axis for this guy is saved here, and I've said data is some data, and I've set the sampling rate in hertz to be 1,000, so I get this sampling at millisecond, I think. Yes, millisecond. So here, time unit is second, and this is the time axis. And this is actually what gets plotted on this axis right here. You can see I get time in seconds, and it's kind of this axis. Okay. And I can also get multi-channel. So if my time series, instead of being just one long thing, I had a first dimension had two things. That would be like 2 channels of recording or something. I could still do that. This one has some duration, and I can did I plot them? Oh, what I did is jumped with that to the analysis. So this is the time series. Is data attached to time, and then the good thing about this is that once we start doing analysis, we just provide it with this time series. So we specify somewhere, the sampling rate, and we don't have to think about that anymore. The objects that do the analysis will take care of that. They'll take care of determining, for example, the bin width of spectral analysis and things of that sort that always get in our way when we're trying to do time series analysis.
So pretty much, what kind of data can go into this? Like, what format does the data have to be in to be entered, not manually like you're doing?
Yeah, so far, because of the focus that I've had on neuroimaging, so far we have readers from files that are neuroimaging data formats. Not of interest to this group, I believe. But you can read binary formats easily.
You do binary.
Yeah. You can read binary, you can read text very easily. That's kind of the examples that I have are binary and text. If you have some weird exotic file format, and I imagine that you have a whole host of, I think OpenElectrophy have readers, so you give them the file, they'll give you back an array which you can give to Nighttime. And that's also written in Python, so it connects pretty well for the electrophysiology. I mean, I wrote this to do my research, and I never needed readers. But if someone writes a reader for some exotic file format, I'm happy to integrate it into our library. That for sure. That, if it's useful for anything. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit just about the analysis. So until now, I've looked at this module of the library called nighttime.timeseries. That's where all these time series objects and representation stuff lives. Another module is called nighttime.analysis, and I'll just import it here, and then I'll show you the different things that live inside nighttime.analysis. Basically, there are a list of these different analyzer objects. And these analyzer objects, the thing that they take as input is one of these time series objects. Right, so we have, I don't know, a filter analyzer will be a thing that takes a time series and gives you back another time series, except it's filtered according to whatever specification you give it.
If you need to know, like, so you have a correlation analyzer, but if you need to know what it's basing, like what the program is what it's doing, like instead of just correlating in some sort of vague sense of, oh, it's correlating, is it in there somewhere that you can understand?
Yeah, so maybe I'll show how you can very readily. So here, for example, the example I wrote here is a spectral analyzer. So let me just initialize that object, and now I have this it's all above here. So now I'm sitting here, and I'm wondering what's in here. Okay, so in here I have CPSD will be sort of like the MATLAB cross-spectral density for the spectrum. Or for example, I'm just curious, what did they do when they did, I don't know, multi-taper? If you like chronics, you must love multi-taper spectral analysis. A question mark will bring up the help documentation for, well, actually it's bringing help documentation for something else. That's interesting. Yeah, because it's already been calculated, so it's kind of giving you back the calculation. But yeah, the code is actually readable, I should say. I think it's in here somewhere in the. So you can look at the code. That would be my solution to that problem.
But this is just the kind of the interface of the code. So if you were
Yeah.
actually using this, would you be using this notebook format?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd do it like this.
Oh, I see.
Because then I can just write my paper in this notebook, and or have every day that I come in and do some analysis, I save another copy, or I do some version controlling over this notebook, and that's these are nowadays when I do my research, these are my lab notebooks. I do my analysis of these things, and now
it's essential though. I mean, in MATLAB, I am always kind of forget what that function did, so I'm opening the function and I'm kind of looking for okay, what am I passing in?
Yeah, these objects are a little bit.
Sometimes you realize MATLAB has done something you totally didn't think it was doing. You're like, what?
Yeah, so these objects are actually kind of an exotic thing because we do some clever things. We do some clever caching so that if you've done a computation, it won't happen again. that's the reason that happened. But let's take some other. So now I'm looking at NP. NP here is NumPy, is a big library that has a lot of various. It's one of the libraries in this universe that have. I'm just going to try to find some interesting function here that does something. Let's look at the convolution, for example. So one question mark will give you the help for the convolution function. So down here at the bottom, kind of hard to see, but there are what are the inputs and what does it do, and reference to Wikipedia, and etc. And then two question marks should actually bring the source code up. So here is the source code for the convolution down here. So you can, for most cases except these exotic corner cases that we've concocted, you can actually look at the source code very easily in the notebook.
And a slightly orthogonal question about IPy. It actually sort of sits on top of whatever Python build you have, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Python, if you open one of these terminals and just go Python, it opens an interactive session in Python, and a lot of people use this to do interactive computing in Python, but once you've gotten used to the fact that you can tab complete the names of functions, that you have your figures appearing inline, etc., you become very spoiled and you can't stand the interactive Python.
So I want to know, like, did you write a toolbox, or you wrote it like an interactive sort of?
This interactive notebook is not my work at all. This is someone else wrote.
Okay.
And I'm just advertising it because I think it's
I see.
great. But I actually...
So you know the guys who wrote Chronix are rewriting it for Python.
They're writing it to Python.
Yeah.
Kudos to them.
Because they can't stand the fact they have to keep paying for licenses and things like that. So
I think that's
find it
right.
really, really annoying. So they're actually rewriting it like right now.
Okay, great. Okay, I thought they were going to go to Java for performance
good.
reasons.
No, but they're actually also writing it with
That's good.
they're writing it to utilize actually GPU processing.
Okay.
So that you can actually, maximize by doing parallel threads, and FFTs become really, really fast with things.
Mm-hmm.
They're really
Okay, yeah, no, that's actually great. I think it'll force all of you Chronix junkies to move to Python, right? That's but
and if you
okay.
have requests, they take them.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I hope our code is like open license, so they can just take it and put.
Where should I be looking for this?
For this stuff?
To download it, yeah.
Here.
It was in the advertisement emails.
Oh, it was. Okay,
It was,
sorry,
and then I'll send another email about everything as well.
So is this utilizing the GPU in any way, either at
Not
the
right now.
content level, not even at the NumPy level, or the SciPy level, or whatever?
Okay, I have no idea. What are we talking about? GPU?
Graphics processing unit. So
It's like okay.
it's like the what happened in the computing industry, if I understand it correctly, is that computer games became so advanced that the processing units that we use to do our computing are no longer really helping them, and they started a whole other thing where the graphics cards on some computers are so powerful that, for example, if you want to compute an
You have to build a
FFT,
new system that has like an NVIDIA card or something.
I should say it's complicated to compute stuff on the GPU. You have to know what you're doing. It's not a trivial thing. So it's
Just
kind
while
of
taking up performance, have you like benchmarked your code against Chronix and MATLAB, for instance? You talked about the advantages of Python in terms of like open source and usability and stuff, but is it also as fast or faster or slower?
There are various comparisons online. It's sort of the same, I would say. It's limited by the same factors that would limit. The underlying libraries that are doing kind of the heavy lifting are all these old libraries, BLAS and LabPack, that are written in Fortran and MATLAB uses and this uses, and so it's, libraries from the 50s and 60s.
NumPy would beat MATLAB by, in some cases, a factor of 2 to 1 in most of the benchmarks that look at.
Oh, really? Okay.
Part of it's because Python became a full precompiled process, which is nice.
The undergrads at Penn, the undergrads learned MATLAB. They didn't learn this. The undergrads here, the bioengineering undergrads I'm going to hire to help out in the lab, do they learn this here, or do they learn MATLAB?
I don't know. I know that a lot of intro to computer science classes in a variety of universities I know MIT, I know Berkeley. I don't know about Stanford, actually. Have moved to teaching.
Because in the past I've always been able to hire this little.
Yeah, I should say that we are planning to bring here kind of introduction to software carpentry, broadly defined, which will include introduction to Python. So I'll keep you all informed about that.
Do you know any good sites that help you, like, say, translate your MATLAB code into Python?
There are libraries that do that. My experience is because there are conceptual differences, this object orientation thing, you might just auto-translating might not do it for you. I have written a little thingamajig that makes MATLAB run inside this notebook. So if you have some thing that you're running in MATLAB and you have to run it in MATLAB and you want to kind of put the notebook around this computation in MATLAB, it can run, MATLAB can actually run in this notebook. So it runs kind of in the background, and you can switch, you can pass back and forth.
Thing you're doing, you could run your MATLAB code and still
Yes.
create this.
Yeah. So you could pass variables back and forth between Python and MATLAB also. That seems important. You do some computation in MATLAB, you pass some variable to Python, you do another
And
computation.
does this, like, organize all your figures? So let's say you change your parameters and it spits out a new figure? Will it?
Yeah. That's so. Here, I just ran it again. So if I had some random stuff in there, or I changed some parameter, these figures would now look different.
But it stores it somewhere, so it's easy for you to keep track of all this stuff.
Well, I have these. It's all the format behind this is a text-based format, so it's easy. I just use version control on all these things.
But essentially, you could just save a version of this document with X parameter. And
Yeah,
then
this
save another
this
one.
notebook is a file in my file system somewhere. So I can, if I want, for example, I can have every day that I come into the lab, I can have a new folder with all the notebooks that I make that day, and then keep going every day. Just make a new folder, put it in the notebooks, and do whatever I do that
Let's say I do
day.
something like, I want to look at a spectrogram and I want to calculate with a different sliding linkage time or a different time frequency bandwidth products. Will it sort of keep track of that for me?
Yeah, you can kind of do that. Yeah, I think that would be.
And does
pretty
it link to like a database like JStack or something like that? Or
To what?
does it like have any, I don't know, like you've got like a gazillion files, right? And managing all that, like does it interact with your notebook? Can you?
So it's similar in a sense to MATLAB that you'll have to do a little bit of data handling on your own. I can
search forever to find that file.
Right. So how you handle the data part is will be a little bit idiosyncratic depending on what exactly the analysis is that you do. Let me just maybe jump to show an example with data, so this is my electrophysiology. I did exactly 10 years ago. I did some experiments on grasshoppers, single cell, sharp electrodes, intracellular recordings, and we had spike times from that. And these were auditory receptors, and the idea here is to do just a spike-triggered average of the auditory stimulus. So, pretty simple. This notebook again is in that at repository on GitHub. But I should also point out that this same example is in the examples. There's a whole folder of examples, and there's an example called auditory processing in grasshoppers, which just goes over the code line by line, and you can actually download the full source code. So if you just click on that, this is the example which will run. So you can just take that, plug in your files instead. This is this is on our website, so it's fairly easy to come. If you just land on the homepage, nipy.org/nighttime, and go to examples, it'll bring you to these examples, and you can take a look. There are a bunch of different examples here, mostly fMRI, but also this. So the idea here is we import some libraries that we need, and then we can read in, the spike times are here inside some file, just as text, and they're given in, so they're given in text, and actually there's also a stimulus over here, also given in text. I need to do some transformation on this, because it's given in volts, so I transform it to dB, and then I generate a stimulus time series with this data. So I transformed the data, and now I have the stimulus. And it was sampled at 20 kilohertz, so it's The unit that I take is microseconds, and the sampling interval is 50. Pretty simple.
Is there like a variable workspace at this point that you can, if let's say you're
Yes.
at line 400, like is there like, in MATLAB you have your whole workspace, is there a quick way to?
Yeah, so the way I'm doing this is I'm kind of double clicking on the text here. I do Shift Enter, that runs this cell. I do Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter, etc. And now, if I'm sitting right here, for example, I have a variable called stim in here. There it is. I don't know, I can plot it. There you go, that's the stimulus. So it is in this is a session with its own namespace, it's called. It's kind of the memory of this session. Yeah. So whatever cells that I've already run, whatever variables I've assigned in there are sitting there. You can plot them, you can look at them. What did I just do?
You guys can kind of easily see those variables.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like in the MATLAB workspace, you have a separate window that
shows all the variables.
But this lets you do it sort of just in line, right?
Yeah, but you have to remember what you called that variable, right? Like, let's say if you're in line 100, you're like, all right, now I need to go call that variable. What the hell was it, right? And like in
there is a who's here.
But if you
There you
document
go.
as you go along, you could imagine.
Is this what you're looking
storing
for?
Your data, right?
yeah,
This is what you're looking for? Who's?
Yeah, who's?
Who's?
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Okay.
I think I just deleted a cell here that was pretty important, but let's just. I wonder what I did.
We'll just see what happens.
I cut some cell out. Oh yeah, I killed the. I know what I did. I killed the definition of the time series with the stim. So okay, let's just do it.
So are you like running like lines of code within that would normally be within one script and just every little thing that the code does is sort of spitting something out in the middle of your notebook as you go?
Yeah, it looks like.
Pretty
Is
much.
that what it?
Yeah.
It's like you're in the command prompt,
Yeah.
but now it's saved. Well, it's like going back in history in the command prompt, right?
It's kind of like what you do when you have a problem in your MATLAB code.
Right,
and
you
try
go
to
like
find
F7,
it.
Yeah,
this is line by line by
That's
line
right,
or
that's
something?
right.
Okay.
Better than
Yeah.
I usually can do.
Okay.
As long as you're not hitting CLC, you're getting kind of something like this.
Yeah, I think I just made that. Let's see if it works. I just converted units because I wanted to. And here's the analysis itself is an event-related analyzer. So let's just plot it. So it plots this spike-triggered average. Based on that, there's a little bit of magic here that goes into this function plot t-series. It takes a time series and it plots it together with its unit. So here is the waveform that evoked a spike from this stimulus in this.
What is the capabilities or built-in for statistics? Is it pretty good in there?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not R, which some of you might use for particular statistic. But it does have, kind of basic statistics, and there's a large library of different distributions, for example, that you might want to use. There are specialized libraries. There's a library called stats models. Let's see what happens. There we go. Which does, regression, GLM, various kinds of statistics. It's pretty good. And then there's an excellent library for machine learning, scikit-learn, which does machine learning, so statistics in that sense. I don't know. Let's continue, I guess. This is one of the. If you want to do image processing, there's scikit-image, which is pretty good. There's a whole zoo of different libraries to do various specific things.
Plotting.
Plotting, yes. One of the big strengths of the Python computing is this matplotlib, which has, there's, the man who started this project, matplotlib, John Hunter, actually died a few months ago from cancer at a pretty young age. So this is also nice. The matplotlib is particularly nice for people who come from MATLAB because John Hunter, who wrote this, came over into this from he got tired of MATLAB. And so he wrote a lot of this, has a very similar logic. Some of the appearance will look sort of familiar. And has, you can make all these different kinds.
And the figures that it produces like this, can you edit them? Like, edit like the axes and
yes,
colors
so
and
yeah,
things
there's
the same way?
very, very customizable. You can look, so I'm pointing to this gallery because if you want to try it out, one thing is you download this nthought Python distribution that I pointed to, and then if you click on one of these images, say there's something you want to do, let's say you want, I don't know, you want one of these Sankey diagrams is what you need for your analysis. If you click on this, it will give you the source code to generate that. So you can just start by copying that and then changing it into what you need. That's a lot of these libraries, including scikit-learn, including our nighttime, etc., have this kind of gallery.
Chances are, looking at this, it's in this somewhere. You can find something to put your data in. It looks like.
Yeah, there's a lot of different. At some point, somebody asked this. The story of this is that somebody asked them on the mailing list if they have 2 dolphins swimming in something. He was kind of making fun of them. So they made 2 dolphins swimming in a blue sky. I think that was. And here's the code to do that. This is just. It actually does demonstrate that you can take a list of contour locations and just plot it.
It's like one of those eye charts.
Yeah. So yeah, there is an example for almost anything you can.
And exporting, you find this pretty good. Export in terms of rendering the image into TIFF or EPS files, or
Yeah, you can export vector graphics. EPS, I'm not sure, but PNG definitely JPEG. Yeah.
To answer the question you had sort of about like culture, like what's popular,
Yeah.
I feel like I've been hearing for a few years now people sort of, there's been a kind of muttering and mumbling and groundswell of like ditching the MATLAB, and people will be writing things in Python, like, you know, Ivy was saying, these chronics is like, let's rewrite in Python. I keep hearing people saying, let's rewrite in Python. So it's,
People are just mad that it costs so much money.
Yeah.
and that bugs
your
will
license.
sit around for a long time. Like if you can report something, it'll take a while before.
So does anybody besides Ariel actually use Python right now for their analysis?
But I'm going to.
I have a lot of code in Python, but it was written for me by someone else.
Well, the trick is,
but I
you
can
know,
kind of
find
do
some
it
undergrad that knows what you're doing, and
Yeah.
you just sort of have them teach you.
Like, you don't have that much time.
Okay, and like I said, around March, April, keep your ears. I'll send it out to this mailing list and others. There will be kind of a workshop for a few days, like 3 days.
Sweet.
So that will be maybe an on-ramp for some of you who are interested in learning. We'll just see if this is something that could be useful.
You guys know Chris? You know stuff?
Yeah. He writes in Python. He's a child
He's the one who
neurologist.
actually installed Python on my laptop and has written all my
He should be.
He should be.
I'm,
yeah.
I'm,
You should invite him if you're going to teach. He's a wonderful teacher.
Okay.
He has other things he should be doing too.
Yeah, he's busy.
I'll just point out one more thing about one of the things that might be useful for you guys. I don't know if this is that a focus of the library is actually not this event-related stuff, but actually bivariate statistics. So coherence across different channels, Granger causality across different channels, those kind of things. So if that's something you do and you want to try this out, definitely try to just go here and do it on your own. But if not, we are it's a very friendly community. There's a mailing list. You can just join that mailing list and email questions, and most likely I will be answering. You can also, if you're shy, email me and I'll just respond to the list for you. So, but definitely feel free to part of the goal is to put these things out there in a way that they're useful.
Is there like a quick tutorial on this website to help you get up and running if you're not used to?
There's actually a free iPod or an iPad Python tutorial.
Oh, that actually brings up a really good point. My understanding was like MATLAB has an interface that you can use on some tablets like iPads. So that it's not doing the computing, it's computing in the cloud. Does Python have something like that?
So I just thought about this the other day. There is actually no reason. So right now I'm sitting in here with you, and I have this one. IPython at Celadon is a computer sitting in Jordan Hall on which this stuff is running. This is just my figure 1 for my. So this, what I told you before about having a figure for a notebook per figure for papers. This is something that I'm doing right now. So here it is, and I can run it on that. And I don't see any reason not to run this from an iPad on the browser and the iPad. I don't know if it would work. I've never tried it. But
Do you have to have iPy on both machines?
then yeah, this is running an IPython server, notebook server over there. So there's a process running over there that gives me access from my laptop to the machine.
Right. And I guess the question is, if you were to use some like an iOS type of thing, it's not like a virtual session. It's not like VNC.
Yeah,
really.
it's not VNC. No, it's what happens is when I run one of these, what happens is it sends this over the wire to that machine. It runs that bit of code, and it might send me back a piece of graphics. Like if I run this cell here, it'll send over this analysis, and that machine over there will send over the wire, whatever this PNG file.
It's just sending back HTML. You don't need to. There's no like plugin or something funky that's running in the browser.
No,
it's
it's
just
just,
straight a web
yeah.
page. As far as your browser is concerned, it's looking
You
at
could
the
you could run this code on your laptop right
That's
now,
nice.
even if you haven't installed anything except for the browser.
So multiple people could be doing it at the same time. You don't have that.
Yes, actually. Okay, I'll show one more thing that Bob Doherty at the Brain Imaging Center did for teaching purposes. Ooh. Okay, that's scary. Never mind. This is for teaching purposes. He set up this kind of website on a machine in the Brain Imaging Center, and now there are just kind of teaching tutorials about MRI that are running on that machine, and the students in the class had to install 0. They just have to be able to log on to this URL.
Yeah, so the whole lab could be on there.
I don't think it'll work for you
Do you need like
folks.
a
I think there's a list in there
Oh, I
with
see.
people. So.
One other question is, the guys at Recordix told me that Python runs really badly on Windows, and they have just moved away from it. They only run it on Linux or Mac.
Yeah, I
Is
don't
that-
see any
is
Windows
that-
machine around. So.
But I mean, is that really
Oh, there's a Windows machine. You should install Linux on that.
true? But is that really true, or
I don't actually know. To say there are ways to run these things on Windows.
But does it really run better?
I don't know actually. I really don't know. I know it's possible. It's cross-platform in principle.
It's just the difference of like if you're a programming purist, how it installs definitely set up to be more of a Unix-based thing. Because Windows doesn't have the right paradigm when it comes to installing this
Yeah.
program.
The installation, I think, is the big issue. But yeah, that's mostly. It used to be a problem 6 years ago. It was a problem installing on Mac, etc. But that's really not a big hurdle, I think, anymore.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Awesome.